Dad said, "Only important people are invited, not you." I turned to go until a 4-star general caught my sleeve. "Ma'am, this way. It's time to announce your rank." My dad went pale. That's the moment Lancaster, Ohio will remember a hush rolling through American Legion Post 138 as neon-buzzed sheet cake sweated on a plastic table and the flag stood in a tired spotlight. Faces swung from my father's smile to the woman in dress blues beside me, 4 silver stars bright as ice. I'm Rachel Ray Morgan, 38, born on a 2-lane outside Sugar Grove. My dad is Charles Chuck Morgan, retired plant foreman with loud opinions. He was throwing his 70th at the Legion that night invitation on Facebook with a line that made folks snicker, "VIPs only." He meant the banker, the football coach, the city councilman. He didn't mean his daughter, who just rotated back from hangars, flight lines, and clinic tents most people only see on TV. I hadn't come to make a scene. I came because my mother would have told me to be bigger than it. Before cancer took her 5 years ago, she pressed my hand around a chipped teacup and said, "Don't let your father make you small." I still hear the spoon tapping china when I walk into the farmhouse kitchen. That afternoon, I stopped by the farmhouse to check the dog and drop off a quilt at the VA clinic. Dad was in the garage cleaning a spark plug with a wire brush. Farm report on the radio. Gasoline and cold metal in the air. "You still carrying that coin?" he asked. I tapped my pocket. "Always." He watched the wire brush bite. "Mayor's coming tonight. Coach too. Important people." "Sounds full," I said. "You want me to bring back Mom's pie plates? They're getting dusty." He flinched at her name, then said it like a practiced line. "Only important people are invited, not you." I swallowed hard, answered the way the Army trained me. Copy. The plan was simple: swing by the Legion, leave a gift card to the feed store with Paula at the door, and drive back to Columbus before the band hit its second song. Dusk put a blue glaze on the parking lot. F-150s and church vans, old men in destroyer caps talking hay and grandsons. Inside looked like every hall I've ever known: plaques, bulletin board, a POW MIA table with a single red rose. The coffee urn hissed. The band tested a twang. Paula stamped hands for re-entry. She peered over her readers. "Ray, honey, I didn't see your name on the list." "It's fine," I said. I was tucking the envelope into the donation box when Dad saw me and raised his voice just enough for nearby tables. "Only important people are invited," he said, smiling. "Not you." I felt the little click behind my ribs, the brace, before a door that may not open. Army habits right along, breathe, scan, decide. I shifted to leave. A gloved hand caught my sleeve. "Ma'am," a calm voice said this way. 4 stars. General Linda Hart. I knew her from long humming rooms where decisions get made without drama. She was supposed to be in Cincinnati for a Gold Star walkway dedication. She texted passing through and I told her not to fuss. She ignored me like a good mentor. A murmur traveled the room. The band leader slid his pick into a pocket. Mr. Billy Tate, the post commander, Vietnam, tapped the microphone. Pastor Miller, who rubs his stomach when the chili's too spicy, hovered. "General, I whispered you didn't have to come." "I won't stay long," she said, eyes on the room. "But some doors don't close tonight." Revenge doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like air returning. I wasn't there to humiliate my father. I just didn't want the story of my life told as a punchline over sheet cake. On the way in, I'd thought of small kindnesses: an old vet at the clinic showing me his grandson's photo, a widow pressing $20 for gas. Those are the stitches that hold a town. Dad had his way of being somebody here, loud, certain. I wanted a different way. "Folks," Mr. Tate said into the mic voice. "Like gravel, we have distinguished guests." The neon sputtered and steadied. Paula lowered her stamp. Someone at the back took off a cap and held it to his chest without quite knowing why. My father's friends adjusted their ties as if neatness could change a story already taking shape. Dad stood straighter, then remembered he was supposed to be amused and shaped his mouth into that half-smile people mistake for charm. General Hart moved with the unbothered grace of someone who's heard every speech and still believes in the next one. She nodded at Paula, at the band, at the old man with the purple heart cap. Then she looked at me and said for the room to hear Ma'am this way. We walked 10 yards that felt longer than a runway. I could feel my father's stare on my neck like a draft. The bandleader unplugged his guitar. Pastor Miller coughed and opened his Bible to the ribbon, though no one had asked for prayer. I rolled the coin in my pocket with my thumbnail like I do before a hard thing. General Hart reached the microphone and waited. She didn't tap or blow. She set her hand on the stand, breathed, and let the room breathe with her. "Good evening," she said. "Before anything else, we honor the flag." Every head turned. For a beat, even my father remembered how to be still. You could call that the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning. For me, it was the point where the story stopped being about who got invited and started being about what kind of town we wanted to be. The coffee hissed. The neon hummed. Outside, a train called down the valley. My mother's teacup clinked in memory. I stood where the general placed me, not small at all. That's where part one leaves us, at the edge of a breath, ready for what comes next at that microphone. The kind of words that don't need to shout to be heard. I didn't breathe until the anthem faded and the hall settled a hush that means people are ready to listen. While the general waited at the mic, my mind did what it does under bright lights. It ran a loop through the road that led me to this American Legion. I grew up 7 miles south on a 2-lane past corn and soy. The kitchen smelled like coffee and Murphy oil soap, the radio always on farm report at dawn, country oldies by supper. Mom Margaret, everyone called her Maggie, kept a chipped teacup for parsley and change. Dad, Charles Chuck Morgan, came home with dust in his boots and the kind of tired that could be honest or mean. Fridays meant football. I sat on aluminum bleachers at Lancaster High, blanket over my knees. My brother Caleb wore number 22. Dad stood by the chain link with the other dads, jaw set. When Caleb scored, he slapped backs. "That's my boy." When I taped ankles as a student trainer, Dad said, "Helpful work, Ray. The important stuff's out there." Mom kept the balance. "Everybody gets a turn," she'd say, sliding me the good cut of pot roast. Later, with the dishwasher humming, "Do things right when nobody's clapping. That's character." I left for the Army at 19 with a duffel and a ride to the recruiter's office behind Kroger. Staff Sergeant Walters slid forms across a desk. "Medical fields open. 68 whiskey." I signed. The first time I said a tourniquet, I was in Texas under a sun that made everyone squint. The first time under fire dust was in my teeth and helicopter rotors beat my ribs. A private bled from everywhere and nowhere. "You're okay, bud." I told him not, because it was true, but because it needed saying. I wrote letters on bad cots, short and careful. Mom wrote back with recipes in the margins and church news. Dad didn't write. At the plant, he told people I was some kind of nurse. When I came home on leave, he met me at the airport with "You look scrawny," then Caleb's trying out for college ball. A morning in 2009 bent my life a few degrees. Ballad heat up. We were moving casualties from a convoy hid outside the wire. I was senior enlisted on shift, which meant I had to look like I knew what to do. A colonel stepped in and watched. We ran the room with a rhythm, you catch eyes hands, words trimmed to the bone. A specialist kept trying to sit up. I set my palm to his sternum. "Stay with me. Breathe." We got him stable, and the room kept moving. Later, the colonel found me by the water jugs. "Morgan." "Yes, ma'am." "You make people do the right thing in a way that feels like their idea." She said, "You thought about a commission." I gave the practical answer, "Money's tight, ma'am." "Not sure I'm the type." And she gave a look that said that wasn't an answer. Her name was Linda Hart. She told me to put in for OCS and wrote the memo that makes boards stop skimming and read. When I pinned second lieutenant, it felt less like climbing and more like owing good work. Dad didn't come. Mom did. The pin went on crooked because our hands shook. "I'm proud of you," she whispered like it was a secret we were finally allowed to say. Stateside or downrange, I found a rhythm PT before the news could claw at my head. Flight lines where metal sang. Clinic tents where we turned pain into paperwork so the world could make sense. I learned to brief without drama and to ask questions that find the thing under the thing. Homecomings were sideways. One Christmas driving past the high school, Dad nodded at the lights. "They're putting in turf. Finally, important folks are paying attention." We passed the Legion. Place has standards. I said yeah, and watched the grain elevator slide by. When Mom's scans came back wrong, I learned the hard words and the way a house sounds when dish soap suddenly feels like an enemy. She kept her voice calm and her hair until she didn't. I took emergency leave and made soup that went cold. On a good day, Dad folded towels harder than needed and said doctors are guessing, which is one way to say fear. The hospice nurse Joy set her bag on a kitchen chair like she was coming for coffee. She called Mom Hun. When Mom went, it was a Thursday, with rain on the porch roof. At the funeral dinner, ham, cheesy potatoes, green beans cooked past memory people, hugged me and avoided Dad. He didn't like the way pity sticks, so he got louder. Sometimes loud is just another way to be small. After Mom, I poured myself into the work, and the work poured back. I promoted learned budgets and air tasking orders, and how to tell a captain no without making an enemy. Colonel Hart became General Hart. Her emails started with "proud of you" and ended with 2 practical questions. She showed up when she didn't have to. In Lancaster, Dad's version of me hardened into something that fit him. I'd left because I thought I was better. I had a clipboard job. Caleb's varsity highlights were the news. Folks nodded because it's easier to let a man keep his story than argue in the bread aisle. A month ago, his invitation hit. Half the town's Facebook feeds, 70th birthday VIPs, only a stock photo of a gold bow. Paula at the clinic told me he used the Legion's sign-up sheet like a bouncer list. "You should come anyway," she said. "Just to drop something off?" I said I would because Mom would have told me to be bigger than it, and because sometimes being bigger is just showing up and not letting it define you. That was the plan. I'm good at plans, but the world doesn't owe them anything. Which is how I ended up in dress blues, under buzzing neon with a general's hand on my sleeve, remembering a kitchen radio, a high school bleacher, a hot flight line, and the quiet voice of a woman named Maggie, saying, "Don't let your father make you small." Morning of the party, I woke in Aunt Linda's spare room in Sugar Grove to a freight train in the valley. September air slipped through the screen, cool and apple sweet. I made coffee too strong, cut it with milk, and lined up my morning like a pre-flight boots by the door, blouse pressed ribbons, checked ID card where it always lives. Fairview Diner opens at 6. I took my old window booth. Carla poured without asking. Back in town, Ray? 2 days. You here for Chuck's VIP shindig. VIP came out thick as frosting. Just to drop a card, I said. A man 2 stools down shifted. His cap read, Korean War Vet. He peered through thick lenses. You a Morgan? Yes, sir. Ray. I knew your mama, he said. Maggie kept the church rummage from turning into a riot. The best I said. He tipped his mug like a salute. At the VA clinic, the front desk smelled like sanitizer and peppermint. Paula took the quilts I'd brought as if they were gold. Mr. Brown in infusion gets cold, she said. These'll help. A man in a wheelchair rolled by oxygen tube looping his cheeks. He steadied himself on the wall and gave me a wobbly half salute. I returned it. Where'd you serve? He rasped. Ballad, I said. Then right pat. Ohio girl, he said. And girl wasn't small. It was affection. Paula printed a receipt. You going to your daddy's thing? She asked, voice lowered. I'll swing by, I said. Facebook's been lively, she said. Over the VIP line. Folks get brave behind a screen, she said. Put me in a room and a pot of coffee, I can fix half of it. At Kroger, I ran into Coach Henderson. He slapped my shoulder like I still wore pads. Ray back from a tour. Back from paperwork and early mornings, I said. He eyed my basket bananas, paper towels, dog treats. You going to see your old man? Heard the mayor swinging through. Just dropping a card. Keep it simple, he said and drifted off. Driving to the farmhouse, I called my brother. Bluetooth made Caleb sound far. He's keyed up, he said. Wants it tight. Tight like the lid on the good sugar jar, I said. Don't start, he said. Try not to, make it about you. I'll leave a gift with Paula and head back, I said. That's good, he said, relief pinching his words. There's a difference between standards and gates, I said. Ray, he said, warning and plea together. Just be cool. I will, I said. Dad was in the garage cleaning spark plugs with a wire brush, though his truck's been fuel injected since Clinton. Sports talk radio argued about a quarterback's footwork. In the truck bed, he'd stacked folding tables with white plastic cloths rolled tight as plans. A banner lay coiled, "Congratulations, Chuck." "You'll need Paula to stamp your hand if you go out and come back," he said like a bouncer. "I'm not staying," I said. He snapped a plastic fork from a bag, tested a tine on his thumbnail, and grinned at it like it had told a joke. "Only important people are invited." "Copy," I said, the Army word for "I heard you," not "I agree." Back at Aunt Linda's, I polished my shoes. Dress blues came out of the garment bag, smelling like cedar and rules. I checked each ribbon, measured spacing with the transparent ruler. Only people like me keep. I slid Mom's rosary into the inner pocket. No superstition, just the feel of cool beads where a hand goes when breath stalls. I told myself the uniform was for the clinic bulletin board. The truth was simpler. It asks a room for accuracy. Dusk settled grain elevator in silhouette steeples cutting the sky. The Legion sign glowed blue. Flags on short poles leaned in a light breeze. The POW MIA table glowed under a small spotlight like a heartbeat. Inside looked like every hall I've known, paneled walls with plaques, a bulletin board for pancake breakfasts, and blood drives round tables under inexpensive chandeliers. Along the front, a long rectangle bore printed cards. Community leaders, Mayor Coach Henderson, First National Bank, City Council. There wasn't a card that said daughter. Paula waved me over. Her eyes flicked to the medals and back. "You look sharp," she whispered. A donation box sat at her elbow. Feed store, gift card. I slid the envelope in. "Tell him happy birthday," I said. "Ray," she began. "It's fine," I said. Dad spotted me before she could finish. He was near the sheet cake, surrounded by men who say sir to each other without quite meaning it. He came toward us with that swagger that becomes a limp when his left knee remembers a roofing fall in '94. He was smiling big and public. He stopped close enough for the banker to hear and said, pleasant as iced tea, "Only important people are invited, not you." The sentence hit the room like a dropped tray. Quick silence, then the polite clatter of people pretending they didn't hear. The hinge behind my ribs set. Training makes choices. Neat breathe. Scan decide. Make your exit so nobody else has to feel awkward. It's a kind of kindness that becomes a way of disappearing if you let it. I turned to go. A hand caught my sleeve. I knew the touch before I looked, the gentle certainty of someone who stood in rooms like this and seen worse. 4 silver stars made the neon look dull. General Linda Hart stood in dress uniform, composed as a chapel window, eyes steady and warm. "Ma'am," she said, voice pitched for me in the room. "This way." Lancaster isn't quick, but it recognizes a symbol. Sound changed, the band stopped tuning. Mr. Tate, the post commander, straightened his cap. Coach Henderson's mouth opened and shut. Paula exhaled like a prayer. My father's smile cracked at the edges and went pale. I hadn't planned any of this. I had planned to show up, drop a card, leave. But some doors don't get to close, not on a night like this, not on a life like mine. I squared my shoulders and followed General Hart toward the microphone. Before General Hart reached the microphone, it looked like a surprise. It wasn't. Not to me, not to Mr. Tate at the Legion, and not to the city clerk who stamped a piece of paper that morning with a thunk that felt like permission. What you saw, 4 stars catching neon, was the moment the quiet plan stepped into a louder room. The plan wasn't about my father. It was about telling the truth in public without making a mess. The night before, my phone buzzed while I was folding Aunt Linda's towels. Hart. Passing through after Cincinnati tomorrow. Gold Star walkway dedication wrapped early. Any chance to say hello, Captain? Me, Colonel, now. Orders last week. Hart. I know. Proud of you. Lancaster. Still your zip? Me, Sugar Grove. Dad's birthday thing at the Legion, but I'm not staying. Hart understood. Is there a post commander I can call 5 minutes in the lobby? No speeches. I stared at the blue bubbles until the towels cooled. 2 weeks earlier, I'd pinned Colonel at Wright-Patterson with an office huddle, and one smash cake somebody's toddler insisted on tasting first. It was perfect, quiet earned. I hadn't told Dad, not out of spite, out of self-preservation. Some news lands like a brick in the wrong hands. I texted Paula at the clinic. She answered in a minute. Paula Tate's in around 9 to check the ice machine. I'll flag him. At 9:17, Mr. Tate called. His voice always sounds like a porch swing. Ray, honey, we can spare the lobby for 5 minutes. If a general's come to our door, we're going to be decent about it. Nothing to step on your schedule, I said. No announcement, just an introduction. She wants to pay respects. Consider it done, he said. Do you have anything for a display? Folks around here learn better when their eyes can rest on a thing. I had a banker's box in Aunt Linda's trunk. I'd brought it to sort later, not to show. A redacted copy of my DD-214, a photo of my hand on a specialist's sternum while a crew chief looked past us to the sky. The challenge coin I carried every day, a folded flag from a change of command where a kid in ROTC shook so hard the tassel trembled like a heartbeat, and my mother's obituary half a column that somehow held more of her than anything else I own. I'll bring a few items, I said. Make me a little list, he said. Names matter. At City Hall, Jenna Alvarez. 30, school board, a closet full of cardigans, pulled me into an office that smelled like dry paper and coffee. Paula called. She said if we were ever going to do that scholarship in your mom's name, today was the day to get it moving. I don't want it to look like we're hijacking Dad's night. Not a peep, Jenna said. We'll file the seed paperwork and announce it next month at the first football game, but we can hand you the folder quietly if your general friend is around. We drafted language on a legal pad. The Margaret Morgan Scholarship for Military Families, $500 this year, for a Lancaster senior with a parent or guardian who served essays read by 3 volunteers who aren't related to anyone on the list. Jenna walked it down the hall. The clerk stamped the intake sheet with a thunk like a gavel. There, she said. That's the sound of something being real. Mrs. Whitaker, the English teacher who once gave me detention and a lifelong addiction to the Oxford comma, came in with her tote bag. I'll serve on the reading committee, she said, if you'll promise to come talk to the seniors about what service actually looks like. Deal, I said. On my lunch break, I stopped at Copy King. The kid behind the counter wore a hoodie and an expression that said he was paid by the hour, not the smile. I need these mounted, I said, sliding 2 photos under the plastic barrier, and this laying down the DD-214 with the inked-out chunks. Like foam board, he asked. Plain is fine, I said, readable from 10 feet. He looked at the picture of me with my palm on the specialist's chest. That you. Yes. He looked different when he handed me the receipt. My cousins at Fort Benning, he said. Thank you. The Pastor Miller first name Herb Belly, like a good choir director, met me by the Legion's glass door that afternoon to look at the lobby. If General Hart wants a breath of words before she gives you the folder, I can say a line. 30 seconds. Not for show, for centering. Keep it plain, I said. He smiled. Plain is what I do. We set a narrow table by the bulletin board that listed Friday fish fries and a blood drive in October. Paula covered it with a white cloth and placed a small frame with Mom's photo at one corner like a quiet anchor. Mr. Tate hung a sign he'd lettered with a Sharpie, Service Recognition 715 Lobby. He tucked it halfway behind a flag, so if nobody came, no one's feelings would be hurt. I texted the general lobby at 7:15. Low key. She sent a thumbs up, and after a minute, another message. Hart Ray, I have a short letter authorizing me to recognize your promotion publicly when appropriate. I'd like to read it. It's yours, not mine. Me. Okay, but please no flourish. Hart, I don't do flourish. I do true. By 5, I had everything lined up like an inspection blouse pressed, coins ready, the folder from City Hall in my purse with a post-it bearing Jenna's scrawl file copy. No announcement. I still thought I'd slide the envelope into Paula's donation box and leave before Wagon Wheel. You know what happened next? The line, the pause, the catching of my sleeve. But before that moment, all the pieces were already in the building, resting like tools on a bench. When General Hart walked me toward the mic, I looked past it to the lobby. Our little table sat just out of sight, exactly where we'd agreed, the frame of Mom's face catching a fringe of light. Pastor Miller stood in the doorway like a bookend. Jenna clutched the scholarship folder to her chest like it might fly away. Mr. Tate had both hands on his cap brim, steadying more than cloth. What changed wasn't the plan. It was the volume. My father had moved the evening into a register that required a different song. The general didn't come to pick a fight. She came to tell the truth out loud, because a town sometimes needs to hear its better self pronounced. She took the microphone and nodded toward the lobby. "We set a table out there to keep this small," she said, "but I think it belongs in here." Mr. Tate moved with the careful speed of a man carrying a full pot of coffee. Paula slid the little table to the wall by the bandstand. The picture boards went up, click, click. The DD-214 under plexiglass. The photo from the medevac. The folded flag corners tucked just so. People turned their heads like flowers finding sun. General Hart kept her voice steady, the kind of steady that makes a room quiet down without knowing why. "My name is Linda Hart," she said. "I serve with the United States Air Force. I came through Lancaster tonight because I had the privilege of mentoring one of your own. I asked permission to recognize her service in your lobby. Your post commander granted it. Your city filed papers this afternoon to start a small scholarship in her mother's name. That's the kind of place this is." She looked at me, Colonel Morgan front and center. It wasn't a surprise to me. It was a surprise to the people who thought they knew me. I stepped up every ribbon, feeling suddenly heavier. 2 weeks ago, the general said by authority of the Air Force Personnel Center, Rachel Morgan was promoted to the grade of Colonel 06. Her orders were read at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Tonight, we acknowledge that publicly among the people who raised her. There was paperwork to back it, a letter, on official letterhead, the edges still crisp. She didn't wave it. She read the parts that mattered, and none of the parts that were for file drawers. For leadership under pressure, for improving care coordination for wounded service members, for mentoring junior officers, for her character, which is steady when no one is clapping. Pastor Miller murmured, "Amen," like he couldn't help it. Somewhere in the back, the Korean War vet tapped his mug twice on the table, a sound like a small honor guard. The general turned to the room. "Service isn't a VIP list," she said. "It's a long obedience to what is right." Jenna stepped forward with the manila folder hugged to her sweater. She didn't try to speak into the mic. She handed it to me, and I handed it to Paula to keep from shaking. Mr. Tate set his palm on the folded flag like a blessing. The band leader wiped at his eyes with the ball of his hand and pretended it was dust. I felt my father watching the whole way down my back. I didn't turn. Not yet. The plan had always been to face the town first. I could carry my private reckonings home. "Ma'am," General Hart said quietly, but the mic caught it anyway this way. And for once, in the room where my life had been narrated like a lesser story, the way was forward. General Hart didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. The room leaned in, and even the neon seemed to hum in tune. "Colonel Morgan," she said, "you've heard your orders. Tonight your town hears them too." She turned the letter so the seal faced the room, not as a prop, but like a porch light. "By authority of the Air Force Personnel Center, you are promoted to colonel for sustained superior performance in medical operations and care coordination stateside and deployed. Your record notes decisive leadership under pressure, mentorship, and integrity when no one is clapping." Mr. Tate stepped to the picture boards and squared them with the edge of the stage like he was fixing a crooked frame in his own den. Jenna stood near the wall, clutching the scholarship folder, the way folks hold hymnals when they know the song by heart, but like the feel in their hands. Pastor Miller folded his fingers over his stomach, eyes damp. General Hart glanced toward Dad, not to shame him, but because a father is part of the truth in a room like this. "Mr. Morgan," she said, voice even. We had the official pin on at the base. "Tonight, we present your daughter with a small shadow box for your family's keeping her eagles a patch and a copy of her orders. With your permission, would you help place one eagle?" Eyes turned like weather vanes. Dad's smile faltered. He looked to his friends as if they might produce a joke to climb out on. No one offered one. Caleb touched his elbow. I saw the moment my father decided between pride and the fear of looking foolish. He nodded barely and came forward. The band leader pulled the mic stand a foot left to clear space, pretending it had always been too close. Paula set the small shadow box on the table. The velvet inside held the place where an eagle would sit, like a finish nail waiting for a picture. Dad reached for the silver bird. Up close, I saw his fingers shake the way they did after Mom's funeral, when he carried the casserole dish to the sink and set it down too hard. He lifted the eagle and hesitated. His mouth opened, but all he managed was, "Well, I'll be." "Place it right there," General Hart said softly, tapping the brass tack. "Take your time." He pressed the eagle into the velvet. It caught the light and sat straight. For a second, Dad stared at it like it might speak. Then he stepped back pale and older than he had ever let himself be in public. He tried to laugh and heard himself and couldn't find the sound again. I stood at attention beside the general. It wasn't about pinning, it was about naming. "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded steady in my own ears, which is a small miracle. The general turned to the room. "You raised a servant and a leader," she said. "You did it with casseroles and rides and people who look in on each other when the weather goes sideways. That is how towns make officers, not the other way around." Mr. Tate cleared his throat. Post 138 recognizes Colonel Rachel Morgan for honorable service to country and community, he read, holding an index card like a man opening a letter from a cousin. "We are grateful. We are proud. We are better for it." He set down the card and without show brought 2 fingers to his brow. The Korean War vet at the table tapped his mug twice, then lifted it like a toast. The sound of ceramic on laminate was small and perfect. Behind us, someone played 3 pure notes on a trumpet and stopped the way you do when you want to honor without taking the room over. The silence after felt like a held breath that nobody minded holding. Jenna took half a step forward. She didn't reach for the mic. City clerk stamped the paperwork. "This afternoon," she said toward me, "not the room. We'll announce the scholarship at the first home game. It'll help a kid pay for boots or books or whatever, gets them ready to go where they're going." "Thank you," I said. "Mom would have liked a Friday night announcement." Pastor Miller's voice rose, just enough to carry. "Lord, teach us to honor the quiet work," he said. "Make us generous with respect, careful with our tongues, and faithful with whatever is in our hands." He finished like he started playing. Coach Henderson coughed into his fist and looked at his shoes. The banker found something interesting on his cuff. People who had nodded along for years to my father's version of me went a shade uncertain, as if the map they'd been using still got them near town, but missed the turn at the big sycamore. Dad didn't leave the stage area. He stood as if he'd been told to hold a board straight and wasn't sure if the nail had gone in. His friends didn't rush him. Caleb stayed at his shoulder, eyes elsewhere. For a heartbeat, I wanted to rescue everyone from the awkwardness, make a joke, wave it off. But part of clean revenge is letting the room do the work the room needs to do. General Hart faced the tables. "Some of you know Rachel as a daughter, a neighbor, a classmate," she said. "Tonight you know her as Colonel Morgan. Both are true. Neither requires the other to be smaller." She looked at Dad again. "Mr. Morgan, thank you for sharing your daughter with the country." The line was both generous and firmly set within the truth, and the old men in Legion caps nodded because they recognized the phrasing from 100 Kitchens where someone said grace in words they could agree on. Dad worked his jaw. "She always did think big," he managed. I met his eyes. "Mom taught me to do things right when nobody's clapping," I said. I kept my voice low enough for him and high enough that the first 2 rows could pretend they weren't listening and still hear. His mouth opened, closed. He looked at the picture of Mom in the frame on the display and then back at the eagle in the box. "Maggiewood," he started, and the sentence ran out of road. Paula saved him. Cake after the photo, she announced, practical as ever. People exhaled. The room's muscles unclenched. Plates rustled. The band leader pretended to adjust a pedal so he could swipe at his eyes again. We took 1 photo, not a red carpet thing, just a snapshot, with the general, Mr. Tate, Jenna, Pastor Miller, and me, with Mom's picture in the corner like a quiet chaperone. The flash popped. I had the sense of a moment stepping into itself. The general handed me the letter. "For your keepsake," she said, and then low, so only I heard, "This town is worth your kindness, Ray. Even when one man forgets." "Yes, ma'am," I said. She squeezed my shoulder, then stepped to Dad and offered her hand. "Mr. Morgan," she said, "congratulations on 70 years. You must have done some things right." He shook because everyone was watching. "We kept the lights on," he said. It was true and not enough, and both of those facts could live in the same sentence. On her way out, the general paused by the Korean War vet and bent to hear him. He said something that made her smile with her eyes. She tapped the brim of his cap a return salute in miniature and disappeared into the hum of the hall like a front door closing gently. As people lined up for cake, they passed the table the way you pass a new baby, slow, attentive hands behind backs. They read the DD-214 like a foreign language they were willing to learn if it helped them understand someone they thought they knew. Coach Henderson stopped me. "I should have known," he said. "I didn't make it easy to," I said. He nodded. "Well, I'll make it easy now." Caleb hugged me with one arm. "You look like TV," he said, trying for lightness. "I look like Ohio," I said. Dad stood 3 steps away, not quite in or out of the frame. He didn't move to put an arm around me for the next photo. I was fine with that. A boundary is a kind of mercy when you've decided to keep living in the same zip code. Behind us, someone started cutting the cake. The knife scraped the cardboard under the frosting with a sound like chalk finding the end of a word. General Hart had said it at the microphone service isn't a VIP list. It's a long obedience to what is right. The room had heard it. More important, the room had seen it spoken plainly shown in a square of velvet, sealed in a folder stamped that afternoon with a sound like a small gavel. I took one last look at the shadow box. The Eagle Dad set caught a twitch of neon and threw it back calm and silver. I felt the air in my chest move freely. Not lighter, truer. "Kate Colonel Paula," said, grinning. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "And a corner piece if there's any justice left in Lancaster." The room laughed the way a family laughs when someone says the thing they all needed to hear. We spilled out of the Legion like a slow-tied paper plates, polite laughs, a sky turning kind behind pickup trucks. The flag line rattled its halyard steady now. I was halfway to my car when Dad caught up the shadow box under his arm. "Ray," he said carefully, "maybe we take a picture for Facebook. Show folks we're good." "No," I said, "let it be what it was. This town loves a story." "It heard a true one," I said. He tried a laugh that didn't arrive. "I didn't know you were all that." "You didn't ask," I said, and I stopped offering when it kept turning into a joke. He shifted the box. "I never said you weren't worth anything." "You said, only important people are invited," I answered. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's your sentence." He flinched. Cricket stitched the space between us. I felt the old pull to rescue him from discomfort, the reflex that makes daughters disappear. I let it pass. "I'll come by tomorrow," he said. "Take a proper picture. I'm heading back after church." He nodded, like agreeing with the weather. "I'm 70. People expect things." "They can expect you to be decent," I said. "That'll keep you busy." He glanced at the Silver Eagle. "Maggie would have liked tonight." "She would have wanted us to mean it," I said. We parted, not as enemies, not as friends, just 2 people who'd stopped pretending we shared the same sentence. Aunt Linda waited on her porch with a mug. Porch light gold dog tucked under the glider. She handed me the cup, squeezed my elbow. "How'd it feel?" "Like air returning," I said. "Good," she said. "Boundaries aren't walls. They're fences with gates you open on purpose." We sat until the train stitched the valley and my mind quit rehearsing arguments I didn't need. Sunday, I wore a plain dress to First Methodist. Lemon oil folded bulletins, the same hymn numbers Mom used to circle. Pastor Miller preached, "Micah, do justice, love, mercy, walk humbly," in a voice people could set their coffee by. In the handshake line, he squeezed my shoulder. Sometimes the Lord answers a prayer we didn't know we were saying. The Korean War vet from the diner shuffled up. "Colonel," he said, testing the word. I told him Ray was fine. He shook my hand anyway, 2 pumps like a promise. A boy in a clip-on tie eyed my ribbons. Do you win those? You earn them, I said, by doing your job and keeping your people safe. He nodded solemnly. I can do jobs, he said, and marched toward the donuts like a man on orders. In the lot, Jenna waved me down. School board meets Tuesday, she said. Scholarships on the agenda, no fireworks, just a vote and a paragraph. It's right, I said. We'll ask First National to match the seed, she added. He owes us. He owes Lancaster, I said. Exactly. After lunch, the Legion called. Mr. Tate sounded like he was smiling. We're greenlighting a monthly Veterans Health Clinic, he said. Dr. Patel can staff every other second Thursday if we do sign-ups here and keep the coffee fresh. Tell Paula she made my week, I said. She knows. She already has a clipboard. I packed slow. The farmhouse looked like the museum version of our family grief applying flattering light. In the kitchen, I found Mom's pie plates under a towel she'd embroidered with a crooked rooster. I washed them because clean glass steadies me. Dad's truck crunched the drive while they dried. He clinked around the garage a while, then came in and wiped his boots like a guest. You heading out? He asked. After I dropped these at Aunt Linda's. He looked at the towel. Your mother loved that dumb rooster. So do I said. He gripped the chair back, wood creaking under his thumbs. I wasn't trying to hurt you, he said. I was making a point. Points make holes, I said, especially when you drive them like nails. He winced. You gonna stay mad? I'm not mad. I'm done performing small so you can feel big. He nodded too fast. We could do a photo at the table, he tried. Tell folks we're fine. We can be fine without telling folks, I said. If you want to make something right, start with Paula and Mr. Tate. Maybe don't make the next joke at my expense when you're nervous. That's a list. It's a start. We stood there long enough for the clock to tick. He rubbed his forehead. Your mother would say I made this harder than it had to be. She was good at the short version. He pointed at the plates. Bring those back at Thanksgiving. If I'm invited? A beat. You're invited, he said, not looking at me. Good. I'll bring the pies. And the fence stays up. No hug. We aren't a hugging family unless someone dies or a team wins state. I'm tired of tying tenderness to catastrophe. On the drive to Aunt Linda's, the radio found one of Mom's old songs, plain voice steady as a kitchen table. I pulled over by the soybean field and let the chorus rinse me clean. At dusk, Caleb texted, Hey, you okay? I wrote, I'm good. Thanks for being quiet when quiet was kind. He replied, working on Dad. Slow go. I sent that's a long obedience too. Tell him he can bring his own pie plates at Thanksgiving. 3 dots. Then LOL. Okay. By dark, the high school band was sawing through America the Beautiful on the far edge of town, uneven earnest, like people changing. Aunt Linda and I sat on the porch and let the music knit up the day. The dog snored on my foot like a paperweight for the present. Think you'll sleep? She asked. I think I already am, I said. Good, she said. Tomorrow will want your strength. Tomorrow can want what it wants. Tonight Lancaster wanted quiet and a little mercy. I gave it both, and it gave some back. The next morning smelled like bacon and steam. Fairview Diner buzzed the way it always does on a Monday. Farm caps, church dresses from yesterday, the griddle singing. I slid into my old window booth and set my cover beside the salt shaker. The bell over the door rang, and General Hart came in without ceremony, like any traveler looking for coffee strong enough to rinse road dust out of her head. Carla poured 2 mugs and left the pot. You want your usual, Ray? Pancakes, I said, and whatever you call sausage that could fix a fence. General Hart smiled. I'll have the same, please. We ate like people taught to be grateful for hot food. No speeches. Just butter, melting on pancakes, the kind of silence that restores. When we were halfway through, she set down her fork. I checked in with the post commander, she said. They'll keep your display for a week if you want. People will stop by in dribs and drabs and learn at their own speed. That's the right speed, I said. She sipped her coffee. What you did last night was not about winning. It was about telling the truth in the right room. Felt more like putting a crooked picture straight, I said. She nodded. Rachel, the loudest people often need the quietest lesson. I thought of Dad's face when the eagle found its place in the velvet. He'll take time, I said. Time is the only honest teacher, she said. Meanwhile, walk forward. Your town is too. Outside Main Street had that washed morning look, storefronts waking the newspaper box still warm. We walked past the hardware store where you can still buy a single screw past the barber, with the striped pole that only sometimes spins. On the square, a sign leaned against a flatbed truck, Gold Star Walkway Dedication, 10 a.m. The city crew set potted mums in a tidy row. A trumpet case yawned on a bench. We stood back while the families gathered, mothers with hands that remembered small shoulders, fathers with the posture of men who thought carrying might keep them from breaking. The walkway curved under the maples like a sentence written carefully. Each paver carried a name and a rank and a date that should have been later than it was. Pastor Miller offered the prayer he had promised, plain sufficient. The mayor said a paragraph and didn't try to make it more than that. A boy in a too big blazer read a letter from his aunt about a brother who loved fishing and put ketchup on everything. The trumpet player found taps and let it be itself. General Hart shook hands, as if each one mattered, and each one did. I stood a step behind unless someone reached for me. A woman with silver hair and a pin that read, Blue Star, turned her clutch this way and that like she'd forgotten what to do with her hands. I offered mine. She took it and said, My grandson thinks medals are shiny. I tell him it's the quiet that's heavy. He'll learn, I said, but I hope he learns slow. Jenna waved from the edge of the crowd, the scholarship folder tucked under her arm. She didn't try to make it the moment. She simply lifted it a little, a promise turned into paper. Mr. Tate stood by the mum's hat, off eyes bright. Paula dabbed at her cheeks with the corner of a napkin and pretended it was the sun. After the last note, people didn't rush to leave. They touched the names like you touch the back of a chair on your way out the door, habit and reverence. I set my palm on one stone and let the cool press make a place for memory. When I looked up, General Hart was watching me the way a teacher watches a good student find her own answer. You're headed back today? She asked. After I stopped by the cemetery, I said. She nodded. Give Maggie my regards. Tell her you kept your promise. I will. We walked to the diner again so she could settle her bill, and so I could say goodbye without making it a production. At the door, she took my shoulder the way she had by the microphone. Rachel, she said, you don't owe another performance. When people want to know what last night meant, tell them it meant you're going to keep doing the work. That's enough. Yes, ma'am, I said. She went south toward the highway, her stride the same steady length it had always been. I crossed town on the slow streets past the high school, where the band room window was open to the morning, past the feed store with its chalkboard jokes, and turned onto the lane that leads to the cemetery. The Morgan stones sit under a maple that's always first to go red. Mom's marker is simple. Margaret Ann Morgan, 1958-2020. Be kind. The grass had been cut on Saturday. The clippings smelled green and sweet. I brushed leaves from the granite with my sleeve the way you might straighten a collar before a photo. I did not make myself small, I said, because speaking to the dead is sometimes just speaking to your own ribs. I did the work, and I let it be seen. I took the challenge coin from my pocket, the one Dad had noticed in the garage, the one I'd rolled with my thumb before stepping into the hall. The metal carried the tiny nicks of pockets and days. I set it on the stone below her name. It looked right there, catching thin sun. You'd have liked the scholarship, I said. Jenna filed the papers. Mr. Tate's got a plan for a clinic. Paula has a clipboard. It's the whole town, Mom. Doing it the way you liked, plain and together. A breeze lifted the maple and let it down again. A train sounded from the valley, 3 notes, and a long. I stayed until the quiet felt finished. Back at Aunt Linda's, we wrapped the pie plates in newspaper. The dog circled twice and collapsed on my foot. We carried the dishes to my trunk like they were something that could break and something that could last, because they were both. You coming up for the first home game? She asked. If the schedule lets me, I said. You'll hear the announcement either way, she said. This is the kind of town where good news carries. I started the engine and rolled the window down. Tell Dad, Thanksgiving has rules, I said. Pie plates come back clean. Voices stay kind. I'll put it on the fridge, she said. On the highway, the land opened up to the flat Ohio that lives under all the hills fields squared by hands and weather. I set the cruise and let the hum of the road put my thoughts in order. Revenge, people like to say, is sweet. I think it's quieter than that. It's standing up straight in the place that tried to make you bend and then going on about your life. At the county line, I passed a sign that thanked me for visiting, like the town thought I might not come back. I smiled because it doesn't get to decide. I do. Here is the truth I carried home. Important isn't a guest list. It's a long obedience to what is right done without applause until the day a room has to hear it out loud. And when the room hears, it isn't fireworks. It's air returning. If this story settled something gentle in you, if it reminded you of a person who taught you to stand up straight, share it with them or with someone who needs a quiet lesson today. And if you'd like more plain-spoken stories about ordinary Americans doing the right thing in unremarkable rooms, pull up a chair next time. I'll keep a seat warm.